Hey everyone, it is plain blade sharpening time here at the Cordless Carpenter. Figured I'd bring you guys along. Still haven't started working on the bench, flattening the tops yet, but it's coming. It's patience. Woodworking with hand tools takes a whole lot of patience. If you haven't figured that out yet, you will soon enough. I really just wanted to bring you guys along and show you how I sharpen, my techniques and tools and whatnot. It's nothing fancy. It gets the job done. I don't have water stones. I have thought about trying water stones, but I really don't. I don't have a need to go run out and buy a water stone, so. What I've got is working. What I've got right now is working for me, so I'm just going to continue doing that until I feel I need to do something different. I do have. Right now, I'm using diamond plates. I'm using the set that both. Yeah, you can tell I watch their channels a lot. Both Paul Sellers and Wrangler Star use. I made my own jig, and my stones sit in it. I do have some Arkansas stones, some pretty nice Arkansas stones, but I haven't broke them out yet. I literally bought them. Thinking I may need them, and I'll use them. Don't get me wrong, I will use them. But for my, for getting things like super sharp, that's when I'll break out the Arkansas stones. But for my everyday sharpening needs, I go with my diamond plates. So we'll just go right into that. You're going to lose my face here, but it's okay. It's not about me. It's about what's going on. So, got to sharpen the blades up, and I was working on my number 8, so might as well do this one. So you just gently take out your setup. I would suggest that you use the right tool for the job. So don't use a teeny tiny screwdriver to do this, and just take this off. It's your chip breaker. Set it aside. We'll address it later because that one hasn't been addressed yet ever. This whole blade, this whole setup is that very, very little, tuning done to it. So we'll just set the body over there, and so this is the jig. I didn't have a vise at the time. Obviously, I still don't have the vise because it'll go right here. I don't have it. I have the vise. I just don't have it mounted yet. But so I just took and I put some of that like kitchen cabinet type stuff on it, that non-slip stuff. I just kind of glued it onto the back. I'll probably change that up to a block that I can mount in my vise. Pull this stuff off and wrap a block in here that I can mount in the vise. But anyways, so this is it. And I did do a little 1, 2, 3 thing on there. Steps. Really, I just did it because I didn't know whether or not, over time I'd be able to tell which was which. I marked them on the back, but that doesn't help, when they're in here. And they're glued in. They're not just sitting in there. They're affixed to their board. They are recessed in, but so that's what I've got. And this is I made this out of maple, I just picked up a cheap piece of hit and miss at the hardwood dealer and went with that. So that is that. And these stones will collect grit and debris and stuff, so I just make sure I dust it off so I'm not trying to sharpen with that. Just the stones, that's all I want. Now I've got, this is a glass cleaner bottle, but it's mainly just water. There's a little bit of glass cleaner left, I'm sure, but mainly just water. And make sure that you don't have all of your nice tools and everything right in the way or in anywhere that they can get sprayed, because the water will obviously make metal rust. So get it all out of the way. So you can get down to business. Okay, so there's a couple different ways I sharpen, and the reason why I have two different ways is because one is a little more, one's quicker and one's more accurate. I guess I could say. I do it by hand. And I also use a Veritas jig. I picked this up. It comes as a kit, so I've got this. And I've also got the one to do the chisels. This works fantastic. This, I've had trouble keeping my chisels actually in there, because when you twist it, right, both jaws clamp down at the same time. It's a wonderful little screw there, like a turnbuckle type screw, but it doesn't hold chisels as great as you might think by the design, by looking at it and the way it operates and whatnot. It kind of like, I mean, you gotta like, wrench down these things to get it to hold the chisel properly. Chisels actually, I've had better luck holding the chisels just in this. So I would not spend the money again to get this jig. I would go simply with this. Now these have two different kind of rollers on it. You have a straight roller and a cambered roller. All right, so this one has a slight curve to it this way, and this one is just straight across. And these wheels are interchangeable. I can put this one on that one and vice versa. If I wanted to, but there's no reason to, so I'm not going to. These will hold, and this is a 2 5/8 blade for my number 8. So it's 2 5/8 of an inch wide, and it fits in here just fine. As you can see, bam. So it's still got a little bit of room left. Maybe could probably take a 2 3/4 inch blade if you had something like that. I don't know what would take a blade that big, but. So I do it by hand, and I'll do one by hand and one by hand, and this is still pretty sharp. I think I damn near just cut myself. But I'll do one by hand, and I'll do one with the jig. Now, just kind of briefly, when I want to sharpen something real quick and get right back to work, I'll pop it out and I'll do it by hand. If I want to get, if I want to make sure that everything is perfect, the angle's perfect, and kind of like a tune-up of a tune-up, I guess. So I'm not just sharpening the blade to get it back to work. I'm tuning it to make sure that everything is there's a reason this is out, right? Because you want to make sure that your blade is square, right? That the tip is square to the side, or the cutting edge is square to the side. It's not super critical that it's square. It's just, for me, I think it helps a lot with setting up your plane when you're actually getting ready to cut, making sure that you're cutting even on both sides and stuff like that. And this, with a huge plane like this, this is a big iron. So I'm going to set this one up in the jig, not oil mine. When they're brand spanking new, they roll like crazy. They're great. Once you've gotten a bunch of water all up in there, they don't roll so well. So I just put a little 3-in-1 oil before and after use on either side of the roller, and it keeps it from locking up. So that's all I care about. So to use this Veritas jig, you see how far or how wide your blade is, right? So this is a 2 5/8. So I'll just set this. You line these two notches up. That's a 2. That'd be 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4. So I'll go right in between there. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you just kind of get it finger tight. You flip it over, slide your blade in. I just get them like slightly finger tight, just to snug up the bar, and then I will take and press. I'll make sure that I'm up against this, right? So I'm set on the number 2, the yellow, right? And that means that whatever dial I have set here, that's the angle I'm going to go to. So as you can see, I'm set with yellow. I'm going to follow this up, and right now the notch that I'm set in is for a 30-degree bevel. Right, so 30 degrees. And that's 30 degrees has worked fine for me, so I don't see any reason in changing it. So there's only a few instances where I've gone shallower and steeper, but for the most part, 30 degrees works perfect. So I just get it up against this edge right here, and make sure that it's slid up all the way. You know, make sure that it's not rocking back and forth. It's flat on that rail, and then slide it all the way up to that that block there. Then I just make sure it's in that position, and I hold it tight here, and then I start slowly tightening either side of the bar. And I lock them in there pretty good. Right, then you just loosen this guy up, and it'll slide right off, and you're left with your blade in your jig. Right. Now for this, I simply I'll I keep my stones pretty liberally wet, and it's worked wonders for me. So I've grabbed it 100 different ways, but what I have found most comfortable is when you're like sharpening all your blades in one sitting. Or a lot of them anyway. It gets pretty tiring. If you've ever done it before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So you want to get pressure. The idea is to get pressure right along, along the entire length of the blade to the stone as you're riding it back and forth. So and it's got these little things, right? These little grooves. It's kind of like where your fingers sit, or whatever. I've done like that, and you just kind of shove your thumbs into the back. I've done it like this. I've done it many ways, but what works best for me is to take my pinkies and wrap it around the knurled knobs right here, and kind of put my palms against the backrest here. And my pinkies actually, sometimes I wrap them around, sometimes I put that pressure right there along the entire length of the edge. Depends on what I'm doing and whatnot. So it's usually some kind of setup like this, and then I just make sure that it stays down, and then go back and forth. Now this is the coarse one. You guys just don't understand how freaking nice this is. I've been working off of a little, like a card table type thing, little camping table that moves back and forth every time I do it. Now I'm on solid ground, so to speak, so this is so nice that it's not moving all over the place. But yeah, so just go back and forth, put even pressure on it. I'm not forcing it into the stone. I'm not forcing it into the stone. I'm just trying to keep it, the edge, the full length of the edge in contact, right now anyway, and the roller in contact, and I'll know my bevel is the correct angle at that point. And then I'll lift up and I'll grab some of that water, or that fluid. Probably about every 15 to 20 strokes I'll do that. I try to do the whole length. Now, normally you would move back and forth, especially if you're doing a chisel, but this plane blade is almost the entire width of the stone. These stones are 3 inches wide by 8 inches long. So you can move a little bit, but not much. And what I usually do is I flip this around, so because as you can see, this jig only allows me to use the top 2/3 of this stone. So like when I go to do my next one, I'll flip it around and I'll just go right to left. That way I'm using both. This sensei will get used more because it's getting used by both, but at least I'm trying to even it out somehow. Now, I forgot to grab one, but I'll do that now. You want to have some kind of rag handy. I grabbed my rag I got a whole new thing of rags, so now I'm just getting to use brand new rags. It's so nice. Alright, so you can tell the last time I sharpened this, I sharpened it by hand, so there was a little bit of a radius, convex, if you know what I mean. And I'll do this so that you guys can see it. Right, and I'll just color this in because you won't be able to see it any other way. Most likely. So we'll let that dry real quick. So right now, got the whole blade blackened in. And remember that all the metal that you're removing off of this blade is on your stone now. And in your wall, floating around in your water and such. So when you do that, you're not really cooling and lubricating. You're flushing the chips and the stuff away from your carving or your sharpening. And the only bad thing about paper towels is, and I like to use it and keep it, keeps the wood from staying wet, even though it's kind of impossible. Just make sure that you don't have any paper towel pieces on there. Made that mistake before. So now I'm dealing with clean, fresh cutting fluid, if you will. So now we've got it. It's all black, and you're probably going to see it's shiny in the middle and black on both sides. Well, it already got all the way to the top, but I'm still working on the bottom there. So that's making me second guess my angle here. I'm just throwing it up to gauge it. I'm all the way up. I'm at 30 degrees. Make sure that pin is in there properly. I'm all the way up against the fence, up against the block. Yeah. Just make sure. Now, the whole point of this exercise is to get a burr on the end, and I have that burr. I have the burr already, but I don't know if it's going to be able to pick that up or not. Yeah, you can sort of see it. I'm trying to get the light where it reflects. Okay, so that kind of is catching it. It's got kind of like a micro bevel type thing going. I'm not a micro bevel guy. I'm a common sense guy. I don't need the bevel that's sharp and perfect to go all the way across. It'll get there over time. I just want it to be sharp right at the edge where I'm cutting. That's the only part of this whole thing that matters. So I'm going to go one more pass with this. that's it. I've got a burr all the way across, right? And you normally would want to take that burr off, and I would if I was doing this by hand, but I'm not. It'll just come off in the next stone anyway. So I don't know why, but I just kind of pre-wet my stone, the next stone that I'm getting ready to use, and then dry off the one that you're done using. Because these stones have diamond. They have diamonds like electronically like electroplated sprayed onto this, but it's just a steel plate and steel rusts. So if you don't dry it off, you'll see the rust in the morning. And this is where I start going. I put a little bit of an angle on, kind of take these corners off, because if you don't take these corners off, it will leave marks on your wood on the project that you're working on. You'll figure that one out too if you don't do that. So what I'll start doing is, and this is the whole point that this cambered, this convex roller is on there, is so that I can kind of roll. I guess I could have done this from the beginning. That I can kind of roll this way and then roll that way, and still be using a jig. And I'm not going that far. I'm just going enough so that when this is in a plane and I'm taking a nice, 4,000 or 5,000 shaving, it's not leaving walls on the side basically, and look, what's going to appear as marks when you pull the plane off of the wood. So I just keep going, and then I raise up on my right side like this. And then I come down. Now I'm flat again. As Paul would say, comes up. And you drop, 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 and now I'm flat. Grab some more fluid. Continue going flat. And then I'll rock it to the left, drop, 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 rock it to the right, drop, 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 and we're good. It already had the edges broken, or I would have, if I've never done it before, it's a brand new blade, I would have started doing that on this stone, but I don't need to, so I just do it on this one. That's where I start. Alright. Then I come to this one. This one's like really quiet. It's much different. I think it's like 400 or 600 grit, and then like 800 grit, and then like 1200. I think it's much finer than that, but whatever. And you'll feel it. They don't feel much different from one another, but they are, and you can feel it as you plane. Like they feel when they're brand spanking new, you can tell this one's rough or coarse, medium, fine. And then after you start using them a couple times, it's like, well, where'd all the grit go? Believe me, the grit's still there, dude. It didn't go anywhere. So, moving on. Hey, you can tell I need to flatten my bench. Of course, this is still a little, this last one's still a little lipped up right there. You know, I usually end up going somewhere around 50 to 100 strokes. I don't know. I don't really count every time anyway. Sometimes I do just to keep myself on track, but you definitely don't have to. When you see that turning nice and black on you, you know that you have too much metal in your on the surface. Too much metal that's going to be creating problems for your sharpening. So fresh fluid and if you like the video, if it's helping you out, you know, give me a thumbs up. Comment, subscribe, whatever. Alright, so one last time and we'll rock it up. And I'm going to rock into the left and drop, drop, drop to the center. Rock to the right and drop, 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 drop. Back flat again. And then this here, I start going lighter. I start removing the pressure right here. So when I first start on this stone, I'm going pretty heavy, like normal pressure, same pressure that I used on the first two. And then after I do my rocks, I start going real soft, like really light. And I like to finish on the backstroke, and that's where most of my pressure is on the backstroke. I do put pressure on the front, but it's I watched another video and it made a lot of sense, and I kind of applied it from that point forward. But when people ask you, do you push in or pull out? Well, I do both for most of it until my very end. But he made a good point that I'll demonstrate. When you go to sharpen a pencil, do you go this way or do you go that way? Right? So going this way would be like dragging back. So that's how I finish. I finish in the drag and I pull it out. Alright, so now at this point you're done with sharpening your main bevel, and that's the only bevel I have. Now gotta take that burr off and make sure that we're flat Now this one's flat across, all the way across, but where that's actually going to be cutting. But it's not that pretty. It doesn't need to be pretty though. So that's what I'm dealing with. I want to take that burr off, that little wire burr. And usually you can do that just by simply putting it flat and pull one time. And that burr is off of the back. And it's just kind of floating in between them now. You almost pull it off there. But I want to, over time, work this nastiness out. Now this is a all of your blades, softer steel up here, softer mild steel up here, and then you'll notice the section down here that's going to get worn down as a, that's going to be used as a cutting edge, is all hardened steel. Okay, so it's going to, and that's why it takes so long to sharpen your tools, is because it's hardened. Anyways, so I'm putting all my pressure, it's all flat, I'm putting all my pressure right here. I'm just simply using my fingers over here so that it doesn't like move all over the place on me. I'm actually able to, guide it, so to speak. And that's that. Now if I've got a good edge on the back that I'm happy with, I won't even do that. I'll just drew one drag back, and that's all you need. So we're done with this for now. So we can just put this out of the way, and I really need to I need to make a new strop because this thing is about had it. But so you just charge it with some compound, some honing compound, and then. Yeah, I need to make a nice long one. But I already have the leather and the wood, I just haven't gotten to it yet. But this whole thing, I usually do it about 100 times. About 100 times, super fast, well, pretty fast. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I drag it back, and I kind of go in a natural motion from back up to the front, up to the tip, and then at the very end I'll flip it over and drag it, flip, and I'll just kind of flip it back and forth until I'm happy with it, and then I'll throw it back into the plane. But here we go. And I'm putting a lot of pressure on this. And I'll switch up, like I'll kind of go this way. It's angled, but I'm not pulling this way. I'm angled and pulling that way and pulling this way. Just to kind of change up the direction. Now, I'm not trying to sharpen that back, simply, now we still gotta ever so gently get that corner. Those corners. Putting the little details on your blade like this make a lot of difference. Now it's got that second bevel on it right now, but it won't over the next week or two of sharpening. But as you can tell, that is a mirror finish. And that, my friends, is a sharp blade. If I wanted to get it any sharper, I would bring out my oil stones. But that is sharp enough to do any work in any shop. This blade will make any surface feel like glass. And then the last thing I do, because it's been in contact with all this water and everything, I just simply oil it up like I would any other piece of metal. It's the people that don't do this step. You pull their blades apart, like this one was before I got it, and it's all pitted. You know, and you can see this one's had a little bit of pitting, but that's from people that don't take care of their crap. So at this point, I'm kind of done with this blade, with this plane iron. So now I got to put it back in there. I'll go over setup later, but as far as setting up your iron, I just always, I don't know why I just do it like this because, I don't know. One step we forgot, but it doesn't take long. Well, we didn't forget anything, I forgot it. But we have to address this chip breaker. We want the chip breaker to be flush against this cutter, right? So when these two match, they match up, we want it to sit flush. If somewhere back here along the back side of this bevel, you can't really see what I'm talking about, but yeah, see, this old knife's good for something. If this part right here is touching the plane iron and this part, the very tip of it, is not, you're going to get wood chips. That's like an entry point for all the wood chips. You just get sucked up in there and, you know, make your plane act like crap. So that would be a bad angle. That's a good angle. So as far down as you can get it without, you know, mine is kind of set with this margin between the stone and the edge. It's kind of perfect. So I just ride right along the edge, like so, and it gives me a good angle, right? So the angle it would be at is like that, right? So if that's where I would be, that's where I am. So now I'm ensuring that the very front of this is going to be coming into contact with that plane iron first. So I just keep it right there and just run it back and forth This does not take a lot of time at all. I'm not really doing anything with this hand other than guiding it. And it's almost there. It's getting close. And try to move it around a little bit so you're not like totally putting a gouge in there. This is the first time I've done this, so usually when I do this, it takes just a couple of strokes and you're done. This one's taking a little more first time. It's going to be a pain in the butt, but because you're trying to keep that pressure even, but you also don't want to lift up or anything like that. Yeah, that seems to be working good. And just a hair more. Oh my. And then lighter as I get towards the end, less pressure. And that's it. So you probably can't see it, but I don't know, maybe you can. I'll figure it out later when I rewatch, but I can't see what you're seeing. So anyway, and then I'll usually, especially the first time, just kind of strop it a little bit. And I haven't really done the other side of this, so I need to do that too. So you want to give it a nice smooth edge to ride up too, so and you don't need to do coarse really, just fine. But we're going to do this edge right here. And we're just rocking it up onto it. So going from here, I start as kind of low as I can get it comfortably with my knuckles. And kind of come up to that. And this isn't the cutting edge, so it doesn't need to be pristine or anything. We're just trying to get it to where it's giving it something smooth to ride up so that the chip doesn't get hung up there on anything. Kind of a cool look, the way it kind of fades out like that. Like a Japanese feel to it. And we'll strop the back of that too. Alright, now we can finally put this thing together. So, you can do whatever you want. Most people leave it in. I don't. The screw. I don't feel it necessary to anyway. It usually comes out anyway because I unscrew it too far. So, screw back in. Just get it kind of on there. And then I'm going to move this up. Hopefully you can see. I'm going to move it up. Right, so if you're trying to take a really fine shaving, and I didn't want to do that. If you're trying to take a super fine shaving, then you want to get really, really close to the edge. If you want to take a fat shaving, you can't have it close to the edge. You need to have it way back here, right? I like to keep it pretty close to kind of give me the best of both worlds. I get it, I don't know what that is. About a 32nd maybe? Oh, let's see. So it's a little over 30 seconds, so we'll call it 3/64. But that's about the average where I like to sit it. And then I snug it down. Then before I wrench it down, I check to make sure again. Okay, so it's right where I want it. I give it the wrench, and it's right still where I want it. So that is where I set my blade. Don't know if you can see it or not. It's close, but not too close. It probably looks closer than what it is, only because it's such a large blade and it's very wide. So at this point, we can put this guy together, hopefully. I do this just to get the mouth off, to get the mouth of the plane off the ground, and then very gently, without wrecking the blade iron into plane iron into something and dinging up all the hard work. Be very very careful putting it in. And then you probably won't be able to see this, but I don't know if I can really get in there or not. But I make sure that the blade is even on both sides as I can get it. That way it's got room to move either way when you go to adjust. Right? And then I make sure that the lever cap, or lever cap if you're in the UK, is straight as well. Then I do it because it makes sense to me. I've never seen anybody else do it, and I probably nuked this whole thing out, but the pressure you're going to be putting as you run this plane over a piece of wood is in that direction, right? Which is forcing the cutter up, right? So it only makes sense to go ahead and pull. In this case, it's already shoved up in there like that, but I will tug up on the plane iron to give it that setting already. Kind of like if you're setting a scope on a rifle, right? The kickback is going to set that rifle scope in the front of the rifle. So you need to push the scope to the front of the rifle when you tighten it down. Same thing here. If you don't, then you're going to go bang and it's going to slam from the rear, which is what the common theory would be. And boom! Well, that scope stood still. It's now at the front of the rifle, which is where it should have been to begin with. So That's kind of my theory here. So pull the blade up, pull the plane iron up, and then I push. Just put a little pressure on the lever cap downwards, and then what I usually do with these two fingers here. It's centered, pulling up, and it's right where I want it, and it goes down. Now that sounded really tight, and it's not that tight. It just needs to be. It doesn't need to be super tight. It just needs to be tight enough to where it's not going to go anywhere, but it's not going to impede you advancing or retracting the cutter. And then you can set up the plane how you see fit. And I put that in the lateral adjustment in the middle when I line everything up. This screw right here, you undo the lever cap when you loosen or tighten the screw. Don't tighten or loosen it while it's down like that. And that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'll do another one maybe tomorrow or whenever I need to, because my plane is dull. I will then, and the 7's ready to go. All it has, as you can see, is this little tiny gap right here, this little hollow. Everything else is good to go. My number 8. So, when the next time one of my planes gets dull, I'll sharpen it by hand and kind of show you the techniques and whatnot that I use to do it by hand. This is my longest video, 57.5 minutes. Very nice. So if you're still sticking around, if you're still here watching the video, that means you're kind of digging what I'm doing. So give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. I'm always on. I check it every day, my YouTube, so I'll reply. I'm not like some, I just started this, so that's why I suck at this, so bear with me. But anyways, I get on here all the time, so if you leave me a comment or a question or a remark or whatever, I'll get back to you. Unless you're just genuinely telling me I suck, which, you can piss off. Everybody else I will reply to. Friends and family, I love you. Everybody else, deuces.